a warm welcome to Immigration Talk. Yes, we are going to be talking about a favorite topic of many, a favorite, but it can be a painful, thoughtful process for you guys as well. Yes, we actually have the best to give you only the best information. Yes, this is IndusTV Immigration Talk. And what's the topic for today? The topic for today, H1B 2022, CAP registration process and issues. Yes, and who are we going to be talking to? Today we have from the immigration offices of New York. Yes, we have Attorney Prashanthi Reddy. Prashanthi Reddy has about 20 years or more experience. She is a counsel to the Indian Consulate in New York, and of course she has been voted the best attorney. So yes, we're bringing you nothing but the best and information on this favorite topic of yours. Prashanthi ji, a warm welcome to you on Immigration Talk.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And I think many people are dying to get some of these answers that they have asked us. We have some questions that we have come up with from all our friends and people from IndusTV who would like to know the answers. And you know, it's a very trying time. So I'm going to do the best to bring all the questions out to Prashanthi ji. But of course, if you have more questions and you need a personal consultation with her, we'll be giving you the information as to how you can reach her. We want you to explain the H1B CAP registration process and what is the timeline. It's a complicated process, and if you can help us understand what the process is and what the timeline is.
First of all, welcome to all of you. As we all know, it's been a trying year because of COVID and because of the present administration. So, and the H1B registration period, the time period of March is always anxiety ridden because this is the only time that you have to file new H1. So all those who are out there, maybe on an F1 status or maybe on a H4 status, or maybe outside the country, this is your time to register for the process. And this year, as well as last year, as you know, it's a new process. H1B registration is brand new, so it's important to find out what the nuances are of the registration process. So this year, as well as last year, what they're doing is they're starting a pre-registration process. So it's an online process. You have to open an account online. And this year, the registration process starts on March 9th and ends on March 25th. So the H1B registration process is simply a process which USCIS came up with to pre-register people. So earlier, people used to file, petitioners or companies used to file entire H1B packages as soon as the cap opened up, which is on April 1st. And then they would have the lottery system. And we know there's more demand than there is supply because there's only 85,000 H1B numbers. So every year they have a lottery, but it was such a wasteful process because you had to send in the entire application. So waste of time, waste of money, paper, etc. So this, instead of sending out the entire application, now what they've come up with is a pre-registration process. So it's an online process whereby you can register with some basic information. And then if your case is approved, you will then file the actual H1B petition, and you have 90 days to file. So there's no rush of filing. You don't have to file within a week. So instead of USCIS getting thousands of applications in the first week of April, like they used to, and then sorting them out and doing the entire process, the lottery process, what they've decided to do is have a pre-registration online, and then they have the lottery. So they're going to have the lottery between the 25th and the 1st. So by April 1st, you will know whether your case has been selected or not in the lottery. They will send you, you will know in your online portal, and there'll be an attached receipt. Also, you'll get an email, so you can use that receipt and then it'll tell you when to file and where to file. And then you can give that to your attorney, or if you're filing yourself, if you're the employer and you're doing it on your own, you could do that as well. Now, just to start with a few steps about how the registration process works. First of all, as I said, you have to go online and register. So you go to myuscis.gov, the website, and sign up first. So when you sign up, you'll get an email confirmation. You'll be allowed to create a password. You'll be allowed to create a two-step verification process that could be via email or text messages. You'll be given a password. Their secret questions, the usual,
Mhm.
process that you would follow to register on a website. Once that happens, then when you go into your portal, you have to select. There are two options. There are a bunch of options actually. So you should select not I am a petitioner for all those employers out there, because I know it's, you are a petitioner, so your first inclination would be to select I'm a petitioner, but don't do that. Select I am a H1B registrant. Okay, very
Mhm.
important. If you don't make that selection, proper selection, then nothing's going to happen. You'll have to do everything all over again. So select the I am a H1B registrant, and then if you're doing it yourself and you don't have an attorney, then just you should select start the registration, right? And if you have an attorney, then you will select received a passport from your attorney or representative, because your attorney will prepare the registration for you and send it, and then you will get a box which you should select, and then once you get that receive a passcode from your attorney or representative, input the passcode that you get from your attorney, review the G28, review the H1B registration, click next, click I authorize, click sign, and then finish and send. So everything is pretty much stepwise. The system will tell you what to do, but I'm just going through this very briefly. So if you decide to do it yourself, you can do that also, and you just start with start a registration instead of clicking on the password option, and then it'll ask you for the name of the beneficiary. It'll ask you for the gender. It'll ask you for whether you're doing it under a master's quota or H1 quota. Very important, because a
Mhm.
master's is a different quota, and the H1B, if you have a bachelor's degree, it's a different quota, right? So they first give preference to masters, and then they will give preference to the bachelor's candidate. So make sure you select the right option. The country of birth, country of citizenship, passport number. Very important to select the passport number, because if you have two people with the same names, then they might think of it as a duplicate filing, and the only way they can check is through the passport number. So very important. Even though you can file it without that, my suggestion is not to, because there might be some confusion created. And then, of course, you need company information, name of your company, if there is a DBA doing business as that information, the social security or the employer identification number, or also known as the FEIN number, of course, your address, employer's address. So this is some of the information that you need to fill out that form. Now, there's some points to remember when you're doing this. If you already have an account that you created last year, make sure that you log into that account and check that it's still active. If you have to create another account, then you have to use a different email address from what you used last year. You can't use the same
Mhm.
email address. Okay? So make sure you do that as well. Also, make sure that if you have an attorney, before your attorney starts your process, registration for your company, make sure that you have registered first. Very important, because if you do it later, then it doesn't work. The attorney won't be able to send you the information. It won't appear in your system, so in your portal. So make sure that you register first and send that information to your attorney. Again, make sure you select I'm a registrant. Remember, we talked about that. Don't select I'm a petitioner. Your email, the email that you use to register your account, you have to share that email with your attorney. Don't share a different email, because again, then it won't work. If your beneficiary doesn't have a first name, or if it doesn't have a last name, there are options. There's ways of filling it out. You just put in FNU, which is first name unknown or last name unknown, LNU, and then you can still go ahead with the process. A lot of people ask me if an LCA, a labor condition application, is needed when filing the registration. No, it's not needed. The only information that is needed is the information that I gave. Just
Right.
the stuff about the name, date of birth, address, etc. Remember, you
Right.
cannot edit once you've submitted. You can't make any changes to the application, so please make sure you enter the correct information. Please make sure you
You're
mention the name of the beneficiary as per the passport. So these are a few things that I wanted to cover before we go into the frequently asked questions.
So, Prashanti ji, your 20 plus years of experience totally showed. You went on, gave all the information that people need, like single breath. I can imagine you can do this in your sleep. But with all the details you gave, I love that when you say, don't do this, don't do that, choose this, and that's exactly what I think we're looking for. But many of us, we are guilty of, going through a form really quick, and there can be a situation where there may be invalid duplicates. And there's a question here that has been asked: is there an appeal process for registrations that have been determined to be invalid duplicates?
Right. So unfortunately, there is no appeal process. So it's important to start the process, like because the process is starting on March 9th, it's important to not wait until the last day, which is March 24th or March 25th, to register, because if there are some issues, and if they reject it because of an invalid duplication, then you can re-register. But if you're going to do it in the last minute, then you won't have time to re-register, and you've pretty much lost your opportunity of filing this year. First of all, don't duplicate anything, because unfortunately the system is not smart enough to recognize a duplication. They should have our DESI consult, maybe IT people working on it. I don't know, maybe they didn't. So the system isn't smart enough to recognize duplications. So duplications will happen, especially if you have multiple offices and you have different people entering the information. It's possible that you might enter the same person's information twice. And sometimes, as I said, it might be that they're different people, but they have the same first and last name. Our Indian names are pretty common. So it might register as a duplication, and that's why it's important to enter the passport number as well. So yes, there are ways of avoiding duplication, but once done, there's no appeal process for it, unfortunately. So we have to make sure we safeguard that from happening, make sure it doesn't happen.
Thank you so much. The next question I have for you, I'm going to take a little time explaining the scenario. So basically, this is about the master's cap. So if you're registering for the master's cap, right, based on the expectation, of course, that the beneficiary is going to earn a qualifying degree, advanced degree at that, and you're actually selected. Let's say you got selected under the master's cap, but the beneficiary was not able to obtain their degree. Something happened, they didn't get the degree. What happens? Is there a risk that the cap subject H1B Parition is going to be denied for that beneficiary?
Students sometimes don't get their degrees, the actual degree, because either they haven't paid the fees or something else has happened, or the university messed up and hasn't conducted the convocation as yet. There's some delay in getting the degree. In that instance, at the time of filing, doing the registration, remember our focus is on the registration right now. So at the time of filing the registration, you don't really need to show the master's degree. You just have to show that he qualifies under the master's cap. And then after that, if it is picked, remember you have 90 days to file. So within 90, you have 90 days to obtain that degree. Now, for some reason, even within that 90 days, if you're not able to obtain a copy of the master's degree to submit it along with your H1B package, you can get a letter from the school stating that he or she has completed all the requirements towards a master's degree. You don't need the actual degree. As long as you show that all the requirements have been completed towards a degree, you'll still be fine. You can file your H1 and it will be considered under the master's cap.
Another scenario which actually can happen, right, with the things that are happening in this world, how will USCIS address a scenario where the prospective employer with a selected registration has one address, right, on the registration, and then moves before they file their I-29 petition, such that the address on their registration and I-29 don't match? What happens then?
Yeah, so that's another possibility, and we need to address that. In that instance, it's not something that can't be managed, but it has to be managed properly. So if you just ignore it, and if you don't notice that the address has changed, and you just file a petition, obviously there's going to be issues. There's going to be an audit fee. Because the address doesn't match, and they're going to say, so what is the actual address of the petitioner? Do they actually have an office? A lot of questions will be asked. So in order to avoid that, when you're filing the H1B petition, make sure that you have a cover letter in whatever, use a colored paper, so that it's, immediately there and their attention is focused on it, and explain that there has been a change of address since the time of the registration to now, and show proof that the address has changed, show the new copy of the new lease, show other address proof, maybe mail that has come, utility bills, etc. The regular address proof that you would show. If you have registered that new address, show the copy of the registration as well. If you have informed IRS about change in address, show proof of that as well. So show as much documentation as you can to show that the second address is actually a genuine address and there has been a genuine move from one address to the other. So you have to document it and make sure that they notice it by putting it in bold and, putting it on top of the application. Once you do
That's
that, it should be fine.
Yeah, I absolutely loved your idea of a colored, to grab the attention and then sharing. And this only comes with experience. And you know how people work. So that was amazing. I think, guys, think of this. If this is a situation, lal rang nahi, maybe yellow and green, you can use and get the attention, I would say. No, thank you. That's amazing. Um, and another thing that happens, human error, right? Human error can easily happen. We're talking about typo. Jitna bhi aapne bola, you asked us to be meticulous and be very careful, cross check it. There's no appeal process. I get it. But I made a typo. I made a typo on the registration of the I-29. Will USCIS reject my registration?
Right. So it depends on what the typo is, but most typos can be fixed. And again, we fix it in the same way. If you have made a mistake, and as I said, the mistake, when you file a registration, you can't amend it. Once you submit it, you can't go back and again make changes and resubmit it. You can submit a new registration, but then that'll cause complications and then they might say it's a duplication. So you don't want to do
Right.
that. So now the way to correct it is at the time of filing the I-129 petition. The same way we highlighted the fact that the address changed, we highlight this typo in the same way. Again, make sure we put it on the top of the application, use colored paper, and mention that there was a typo. For example, if the typo was the name of the applicant, the beneficiary, and by mistake, maybe we even used a different name. Maybe we used a middle name that doesn't exist, it's not his name, it's someone else's name. But in a rush to file, we use the wrong
Right.
name. So we have to make sure that we first tell them that it's a typo and that it was unintentional. And second, submit documentation to show what his real name is. Submit the copy of the passport. So there are ways of correcting typos. USCIS sometimes is not forgiving in some
Right.
instances, but in this instance, it can easily be corrected. So make sure you correct it before they send a huge RFE asking for that and 10 other things. So make sure you
Nice.
correct.
We'll move on to the next question here. Uh, with the USCIS online account, right? Do the both, right? The attorney and the client, do they both need to create a USCIS online account for the H1B electronic registration process?
Yes, because even if you're using an attorney, you have to actually sign the G28 and you have to verify the information that's filled out online. The attorney cannot do it unilaterally. So USCIS has created a process whereby you're actually approving what the attorney has filled out. And there's a process whereby that information can be shared from one account to the other. So once the attorney fills out that information, and they give you a password, you can actually view the same online form and say, I consent and yes, and I approve. And then once you do that, the attorney then can go ahead and submit it. So yes, there are two accounts created just so that you can verify the information and sign off on it.
Will the system allow for multiple members of the staff, right? Similar reasons to log into my account at the same time.
Right. So again, it's not as robust an account as you would have hoped that it could
Mm-hmm.
be because it's being used by literally thousands of people. I wish it was a multi-user account, but it isn't. So only one
Okay.
person at a time can log into it. So the way around this is if you're in a multinational corporation or if you're a small business, but you want to expand and you're filing several petitions and you have different locations and you have HR people from different locations filing these petitions and you want to have the ability to do that, then you would open more than one account and keep track of all of them,
Right.
of course, and use different email addresses. But then that would be the solution, because one
Okay.
account can only be used by one person.
How should a registrant with the selected registration notify USCIS if they do not intend to file a petition?
Right. So this is important. What happens if I file my registration, I get picked, but I don't file the H1B petition within 90 days? USCIS is not going to be happy about that, because obviously you're using up a number which could have then been used by someone else. My suggestion is don't file a frivolous registration, file only if you need it. But if you don't file, is there any way of notifying USCIS that you're not filing? No, there isn't. But there could be an audit. If USCIS sees a pattern, for example, that there are 10 cases and you haven't filed a single one, all of them have been selected in the lottery, but you haven't
Right.
filed a single case, then they're going to look into that and see if there's some fraud there. And so you better have a good explanation and documentation ready on why you didn't file and what are the reasons, and they have to be compelling. Last year, maybe because of COVID, USCIS didn't really go after people who didn't file. So let's not presume the same thing will happen this year. So I would caution everyone to not file a frivolous registration, but file something that you need. And as long as at the time of filing you have a need, if that changes later, that's a good enough reason. But it shouldn't be a frivolous application when you file it.
The next question is based on the 90-day period. And I do have to tell you, you're like rattling off these answers. Amazing. It's like, to me, these things are complicated. And when I hear you say it's pretty impressive, absolutely love this conversation. Let's
Thank you.
talk about the 90-day period, right? So the registration is selected and the petition has been filed during the 90-day period, but is rejected. Will the petitioner be eligible to refile if he's still within the 90-day period?
Yes, and that's good news. So again, don't wait until the end of the 90-day period to file your H1B. File it as soon as you can. So
Right.
just in case something happens and your case is rejected because you sent it to the wrong address, or maybe you put in the wrong check, or you didn't sign off on your form, or you left something blank, anything is possible, right? So make sure that you do this sooner rather than later, so that even if the package comes back, you can, then resend it, and because you're within that 90 days. Now, another interesting question related to that. Last year, for example, they had two lotteries, because first time they had a lottery, all the numbers were not used up because people who filed the registration didn't actually file the H1B petition. And because of COVID, that was understandable. Business suddenly changed. So they opened up a new lottery system, and then there was a new period to file for the second lottery. Now, some people have asked me that question. If my H1B petition was selected in the first lottery, but was then rejected, can I file during the second lottery period? No, you cannot. So you have that 90 days, you have to file within that 90 days. Since you were selected in the first registration and under the first lottery, you have to file within the 90 days allotted to that lottery period. You can't use the other 90 days, which is allotted to the second lottery period. So that's just something I thought I would let you guys know.
Okay, awesome. No, that's extra information that really helps people. Another thing that can happen is about payment, right? Initially cleared with the registration and my payment cleared, but subsequently failed because the payment was made maybe from an electronic check and returned by the bank. What happens in that case?
Yeah, so this is again very important, because this actually happened for a company that I know. They filed several petitions on their own, and all their petitions got rejected. And it got rejected only after the registration period got over. There was nothing they could do about it, because if you don't pay the $10, then they can't accept your registration. And unfortunately, they won't let you know that. They may not let you know that during the registration period, because the registration period is very short, from 9 to 25th. So they might let you know that after the registration period is over, and that's it, you're done for that year. So all those new people that you wanted to get in most probably will have to be postponed to next year. So it's very important to make sure that you call your bank, that they have a process in place, that they don't reject it for some reason that you're not aware of. So make sure that you call your bank, or if you're using a credit card, then call your credit card company. Make sure you're in good standing. Make sure there's money in the account, because nothing can be done later on. So you have to make every effort to ensure that the payment goes through.
Let's talk about signatures, right? May an authorized signatory within the company who is different from the authorized signatory that signed the H1B electronic registration, can that person sign the paper for I-129?
Yeah, absolutely, because things change in companies and employees leave. So simply because someone has filed a registration um, earlier and signed off on it, maybe that person has left the company or is not available at the time that the H1B is filed. So anyone who's authorized to sign can sign. So, it would traditionally be either the owner, or it could be a manager, or it could be a HR person. Whoever is authorized to sign in that company can sign the I-129, and it doesn't have to be the same person that signed off on the registration.
Awesome. And I think the key word there was the authorized signatory within that company. So that's good. I'm actually approaching, believe it or not, the last question I have for today. So let's go to this one. How will USCIS handle successor in interest issues for H1B cap registrations? Let me give you an example here, right? Company A submits a registration which gets selected and then is purchased, which happens a lot nowadays, is purchased by company B before the H1B cap petition is filed for the selected registration. So will USCIS handle the successor in interest issues?
Yes, so successor in interest is an old terminology. I mean, is a well-known terminology in USCIS, and it is used in different cases. It's used in the green card scenario. It's used when you file the I-140. It's used in the H1 scenario, and so they have that option of not having to file the case all over again simply because something happened. There's a corporate restructuring maybe within the company. So that successor in interest scenario will play out in the same way with the registrations as well. So for example, if company A has registered for you, but it's bought over by company B, as long as company B has bought over the liabilities as well as the assets, um, and you are part of that asset, it's a successor in interest case. Or it could be that, the owners have changed. Maybe the company is exactly the same, it's just the ownership that has changed. So that's fine. That's a successor in interest. So as long as it meets the parameters of the definition of successor in interest within immigration law, yes, even if it's a different company that's bought over your company, that new company can now file the H1B petition. So that should be fine.
Thank you so much, Prashanti ji. It was absolutely a pleasure to have you here to talk about. It's a very important topic, and I always say America is still going to be the land of dreams. It's going to still be the land of dreams that makes it beautiful. Like the world is going to be definitely beautiful after the pandemic, and an immigration attorney as you, somebody who has so much experience, you're going to be that succeeding factor for people's dreams to come true. And really happy that we were able to get you on Indus TV to help us give these answers to people. And I'm really hoping whoever is listening and is in a predicament, please reach out to Prashanthi Reddy's law offices. We'll definitely share that information as to how you can reach out if you need more help from them. But I have to say, thank you so much, Prashanthi ji. It was wonderful to have you on.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be on the show, and I hope um, whatever information I've given is useful, and yeah, would be happy to help.